This time on the Dirthead Shed, it's not perfect, but it's pretty dang good. We got the Nissan on the road. Check this thing out. Yeah. Yo, I'm back in the shop and the truck's still not done. I missed my deadline of getting this thing on the road and driving it to the SEMA show, but I'm not gonna let that stop me. I'm gonna keep working on it. We'll just create some new deadline. I didn't really have to be there, I just wanted to be there. But this time on the Dirthead Shed, I'm going at it with a little bit better frame of mind, I guess. A little more realistic. Let's start with a list. That's what we actually need. I need a list of things that I actually have to get done so I can mark them off so that we can get this thing together, we can go drive it, and get it off my lift and out of my shop. At least, like, as a huge project. It needs out of here. All right. I also ditched that other camera. I was having so much trouble with that thing being shaky, so we're back on a GoPro. Mini trucking, my deadline. I missed it. Oh well, let's see what we really need to do. I still have to finish those front shock mounts. That's a pretty big one. I started on that in the last episode and I actually made really good progress on it. Then right at the last minute I was having camera problems. I had filled up an SD card. I was tired of messing with that camera, so I was like, you know what, that episode's done. So we're picking up where we left off there. I gotta finish that passenger front shock mount. Then I got to do the passenger inner fender well / firewall. Once that's done, I definitely have to mount all of the little items that are in the engine bay, like the coil, and there's some emission stuff there. So I need to mount everything under hood. So we need to mount all the loose stuff under hood. I got to put a battery in this thing and build a battery box. So battery mount, we'll put that in there. So once those things are done, like bag shocks, fenders, battery, anything under the hood that's done is done, that's gonna be rad. Then I need to torque all the front suspension, and I need to mess with the tie rods. So I gotta shorten tie rods because it's towed out like a crazy. What do I want to do next? Let's finish plumb and wire the air system. That's done. I'll be able to air this thing up and down without having to use the compressor in the shop. So this is a big one. That's going to be probably the majority of my work this week, actually, is going to be finishing that. Once that's done, then I got to mount those seats. I got to mount seats in general. And I have some pretty special seats that are going in this thing. I'll show you those here in a little bit. I got some rad PRP Enduros for it. I kind of want to do an oil change. Bolt-on bed, wire taillights, and then we test drive. This isn't that bad. This is a lot of work, but it's not undoable. All right, we got this magnetic mat from Sunex. I think this is the perfect application for it. It holds lug nuts and it'll hold my list. Let's try and mark some of this stuff off before the end of the day. Let's start by finishing up shock mount over here. This is kind of going to be a pain in the butt though, because if you look in there, I've got a whole bunch of stuff that has to do with brakes that's all in the way. Dude. Peanuts and sunflower seeds. Where it's at. What are we doing here? Let's see if we can just unbolt this and sort of push it out of the way. Maybe make a little bracket that'll re-bolt it to the firewall, but bolt it inboard just a little bit from where it's at now. That's the key on this truck. I've been trying to keep stock things as stock as I can. I guess the term is stock and drop. I'm trying to keep this thing sort of everything is normal other than how ridiculously low it is. I don't want to re-engineer this entire brake system just for the sake of simplifying it. I want it just to stay sort of stock and usable, which is becoming a royal pain. Oh, that thing's just gonna move right in there. That's enough room, I think. Now I just gotta get this line and this line and this line out of the way. All right, it's like an hour later. I haven't really got started on the shock mount yet. I ended up making a little tab that holds this junction for the brakes, and then I ended up making a little bracket that bolts onto the firewall where that used to bolt. I push that over and then it bolts to that. So it's just kind of like tabs and bracket making afternoon, I guess. I'm gonna go ahead and get the shock, the tab for the soft line mounted real quick over here. Yeah, we can set that shock tower in place and do what we set out for an hour ago. It's telling me that that's the spot. We got clearance on the firewall. We got clearance on the brake parts. All right, that's where that shock mount's gonna live. This thing's good to go. Let's see. I'm gonna call that a win. Let's pull it all back apart, weld it up, move on to the firewall. I want to show you a cool trick that I'm gonna try and accomplish today, and that is front inner fender wells. Inner fender wells can be kind of a pain on these mini trucks because the factory sheet metal would have started like right here and been really low. And in order to get these things to sit so low, even with just airbags, a lot of times you have to cut the inner fender well structure. Then you go and lower it another 3 inches like this body drop has. And all of a sudden your tire's almost all the way up to the hood here. So the other side, I did a couple of years ago when I was really pushing on this truck, and it has a trailer fender that's been grafted in and welded, and basically the structure's all kind of put back in place. I've also had to cut back to tub for the firewall. You can see here, the firewall used to come out like this far, and the tire needs all that space. So there was just tons of work in this. There was a bunch of work reworking how the clutch master cylinder is in there and how I had to like angle it and move it up. So I feel bad that I did all this work without documenting it back in the past, but luckily I didn't finish it, so we get to do it again. I've got this side cut out. You can see the firewall section where the tire would be rubbing, so that's all cut out. I've got the sheet metal that's left up top trimmed, and we should be able to go over here, trim an edge off of this trailer fender that's been sitting around forever, and let's start welding it into the truck. This would have been an 8-inch wide trailer fender, and I think it's 14 gauge metal. The stock sheet metal on this truck's probably closer to 20 gauge, so this is quite a bit thicker than anything the factory would have had. I'm gonna keep this inside rolled edge, but the outside one I need to get rid of because that's where it's gonna actually weld to the fender structure. So let's chop that off. Truthfully, back in the 90s, we didn't really use this trick. It wasn't till probably, I didn't use it ever. It was probably like right around 2000 that this would have become a really popular trick for mini truckers to use. And it may have been popular and I just wasn't paying attention in the 90s. But I feel like we used to actually modify the stock fenders, cut them and raise them up, and that way you could keep your all your mounting points for all the stuff under the hood, which we'll get into later today. Right now I'm going to sand this edge so that I don't have a bunch of slag that contaminates my weld, and then we'll go start tacking it into the truck. I got some of that old undercoating sanded off in the wheel well, and then I went in here and I actually dug out a bunch of this like sound deadening material that's wedged between these two layers. That's part of the reason why I had to do that different back wall on the cab, because it had these layers of metal with that stuff inside and it just would not weld very well. I've got the truck trimmed to where it matches the other side, and I've got the trailer fender trimmed to where it's the same size and shape as the other side as well. So in theory, we should be able just to kind of push this thing up in place and tack it, and it'll be spot on. I need to go ahead and like try to hold this whole wiring harness up out of my way though too. Let me grab a ratchet strap and we'll hook it up to the hood. All of this stuff is gonna have to get remounted. That on its own is a huge job. Now let's see if we can get this thing to kind of look perfect and symmetrical to the other side. Am I close? Here. Let's get an easy little tack over here. That doesn't look right at all. The hard part about this is that I can't really like clamp it into place and like double check side to side and make sure it's all symmetrical. I'm kind of stuck with actually having to tack it and then go and check. All right, let's sit back and see how it looks compared to the other side. I've got that side tacked in, and I want to just kind of check and make sure the angle of them and stuff is similar side to side. So I've got some angle iron here resting on the cowl and on the core support, and I'm just kind of like measuring down the highest point right about 1 3/4 inches. Let's go check this side, and the highest point here right at 1 3/4 inches. That's close enough for me. I feel like I'll tack this in a couple more spots and then we can start kind of figuring out other things that we've got to do in this space. It's also really important that when you tack this stuff, you're keeping an air blower handy or a water bottle and making sure that if you catch stuff on fire on the inside of the firewall, that you can put it out really quick. So much wire and insulation and undercoating and seam sealing that it's always kind of a mess. Cool. I think before I get too much farther, I want to throw a tire on it, jack it up, and just make sure the tire says everything's cool too. It's a lot of back and forth and fitting things building one of these trucks. I'm gonna wear out these lug nuts before I even drive it down the road. Ooh, it looks tight. We're bottomed out on the shock. That fits. It actually has a little extra space up here, which is good. I've got something we gotta fit in that space. But we got plenty of clearance on the firewall, which is rad. I gotta figure out the battery and location. I've got a little tiny battery here. This is actually a battery that would be made for like a Honda Civic. And I think I can make it fit. I think I can make it fit in here. And if not in that space, which I think I can make happen, it'll just be right up against the headlight. If I can't fit it in there, I think I can fit it down here below the headlight and behind the grill. Just not sure if that would end up getting into the tire. Let's do a little more fab work and finish work on this fender well up at the firewall, some sheet metal work, and then we'll start messing with this. All in all, a solid morning in the shop. I've been pretty overwhelmed with this whole project, and I assume that's why I've been putting it off as long as I have. I'm still kind of freaking out on how much work is needed to do under here. And I keep thinking like the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right? Oof, coolant. So we're just gonna work on one thing at a time. We'll work on getting the battery situated, then we'll probably move on to this power steering, and then we'll move on to the rest of the things. I've got fuse block, all kinds of stuff, and that's just on this side, but we can handle it. We got this. Now I'm just gonna start cutting stuff. I like the idea of this thing going down below, but I don't think it would really work with ever being able to remove it. But I don't know, I'm gonna cut this back a little bit and I'm gonna cut this forward a little bit, and then it might actually drop down a little farther. Like getting that thing a little bit out of the engine bay would be a huge help. Let's see what kind of room we have now. That's getting there. It physically fits in the space, that's good. I think we're getting it figured out. All right, I'm gonna try and make a simple battery box out of this electro galv that we've been using for the fender well stuff. Just kind of keep it simple. All right. The width is good. Now I need to bend up on both sides. This side here is only going to be about 1.5 inches, and that'll go up against the core support. And then this side is going to be taller, and it will end up grabbing the inner fender well. That'll sort of drop the battery down into that little pocket. My sheet metal brake is over here on the floor. It's hard to use because I can't put a big handle on it when it's on the floor, but it might have enough juice to bend this up. Let's see. Oh yeah. Now we're talking. Let's go see how we can make this thing work. All right, let me trim that. Let me trim this guy off, and then this thing may kind of drop in there. I don't know. This is how it goes when you're just kind of winging it. All right, will this thing fit in there like a glove? Heck yeah. All right, I'm going to take a couple quick measurements. I need this thing kind of up relatively high so that we have less issues with the tire. But I think we're in the ballpark right here. Heck yeah. In the ballpark. I don't think it's going to be a problem at just regular compression. It's not. Right about there is about the lowest I'll be able to steer this thing. So it could be a problem there with steering with it low. I guess we need to grab a fender and see where it would be sitting right now. Let's grab a fender and see if it's even possible to steer with it as low as it is right here. It's pushing pretty hard on the fender, but yeah, it's not gonna be steering that low. I'm gonna need it about there. Yeah, it's hitting the corner of that box right at the same time as it's hitting the fender lip. So I think we're probably fine. The joys of having a super low truck. Everything Has to be thought about, it seems. I just trimmed it a little bit. Just went with the plasma cutter and kind of recreated the shapes that are going on in here. That looks cool. That is tacked. Just blew a big hole in that super thin sheet metal. But we recovered. Throw a tack here. What the heck, might as well throw a few. That is looking like the start of a battery box. When we're winning, this is great. I'm gonna go ahead and kind of finish boxing this area in, and we'll like nip off as much of this corner as we can so that I have as few problems as possible. I've been going back and forth a little bit with some sheet metal, trying to get my best fit I can out of this. I think we're pretty darn good. That actually fits pretty good. Let's try that. Seems pretty good like that. Awesome. Got ourselves an inner fender well and a battery box. Can't beat it. Let's put the cables on it and see if this thing has enough juice to fire this thing up. This was another one of those like used car lot batteries. Basically it's a refurbished battery I got for like 35 bucks. And it's for a Honda Civic, so it's tiny. And it's designed to start at 1.6, not a 2.6. Fire in the hole. Yes! Look at that. Little tiny battery is gonna work fine. Now it's time to reorganize all this stuff. It's gonna be a mess, but I gotta deal with it. We've made a ton of progress today in the last 2 days. I mean, come on, shocks are done, firewalls pretty much buttoned up, inner fender wells are coming together. It's got a heckin' battery tray. This thing's becoming a real truck. Check this out, I stayed pretty late last night. I didn't film a bunch of it because it's kind of just tedious, boring work. I made some tabs and brackets to mount this power steering reservoir. I made a new feed line for the reservoir to the pump. I kind of altered the radiator hose so that it doesn't have such a big kink in it. Just little stuff like that, kind of fine-tuning it. There's going to be a ton of that today. Again, all these little things like this relay block, everything needs a home. It's got to be bolted down and nice. And there's going to be a bunch of that. Hopefully at the end of the day though, I will have these wheel wells in primer and seam sealed, and if that happens, that's a huge, it's boring work, but if I can get that done, that's huge, because I've been avoiding this whole project basically for 2 years. Time to get it done. I've got a few more things in here that need mounts. This sort of charcoal canister or some sort of canister. The fuel pump needs something to mount to, or fuel filter, sorry. And where is my sheet metal? I started figuring out a piece of sheet metal that's going to fit in here that kind of like is convex, and it'll lean in a little bit. And it'll give me a little bit more protection from water spray into the engine. I'm a little worried about water spray in the fact that I have an open air filter right here. So this panel that I'm going to put in is going to sort of take care of that. I went ahead and I've already got it drawn out on the outside edge, and now we're going to go ahead and trim this one up, and we can go start fitting it in there and see how we can sort of sort of button this side up tonight. That's the goal, button this one up tonight. It's already kind of late, but we can maybe start working on that side as well. If this fender well thing works though, it's gonna be cool making one of those for both sides. We'll give this one a rough cut and then go fit it and see what we want for a real shape. So I'll just kind of cut along this line, leave it a little big. This part's coming together pretty quick. I didn't even really realize I was about to do this, and now all of a sudden we've got a lower inner fender panel. We'll get it kind of in the zone, and then we make it all concave and cool, and we'll tack it before it falls or slips away like it's doing right now. That's rad. Super tight like a drum. Oh, it's super cool. You should see it from here. Look how cool that thing is. Check it out. It is like weeks later. It's weeks later. I had to leave off on this thing and work on the Jeep truck thing and get it buttoned up, and got my little Mazda back there together for a trip, and that one kind of failed, but you're probably figuring it out. I didn't make it on that deadline that I was trying to, but I think I established that earlier in a video. Check this out though. Last time you saw this, it was painted white. Well, the white paint that I got never dried over the top of any of that seam sealer, so I ended up having to go through and wipe all that off and clean it all back up, and it was a total mess. So I lost a little bit of steam on that, but we'll get back to it. I will use real primer and real paint, and it will dry over the seam sealer. I came over here and we were working on this inner fender well, and it is actually welded and ground and looking good, and it's ready for seam sealer. The only things I've got to do are finish mounting these little items in here. Like I got the coil and whatever this vacuum thing is. All right, I got all my little brackets made. Everything has a home finally, so kind of making moves on this. The coil's got a little bracket there. Whatever this thing is mounted to the inner fender well. This is the smog pump, so that's actually got a home now. I can basically start taking it all apart and seam seal it and let that dry, because I want to be able to primer this thing and paint it and have the stuff actually like cure properly. All right, we're rolling through it now. I got the seam sealer on where I want it. I'm using some tinfoil to cover suspension parts and chassis parts. I haven't got in here yet, but all these little brackets are finished up, the seam sealer's in, and it's time to start priming this thing. All right, here we go. Got some epoxy primer mixed up. Let me turn the pressure down a little bit. All right, let's see how she goes. This is a good epoxy primer, PPG brand stuff. This is basically made to go right over bare metal. This isn't like a high build, like sandable primer really. So it should be ideal for what we're doing right here, because I'm gonna go like epoxy prime one coat, and then we're just gonna put white paint over it. So we should be on point right here. I've been hustling on this thing without the camera on, and I actually made some moves on it since you guys saw it last. I think I was just painting the inner fender wells, and I went in and I did like a final install on all the bits and pieces in here, got the things in place, finished mounting up all this stuff that goes with the smog system and the ignition. I even came out here and I threw some P-clamps and hardware on the main wiring harness that comes out of the firewall. So we've got clearance for the tire now. That's going to stay out of the way. let's go ahead and button up the front of this. I think what I need to do right now is just go in here, paint up those shock mounts that we did last, just get some black paint on those. I'm not gonna get too wild style on it. We'll just sort of button up and clean this overspray mess, button the front suspension, shorten the tie rods a little bit, get the wheels on it, call that kind of done. Truthfully, I need to get this thing done so that I can get it out of the shop. If I can put it in the garage at the house for the winter, that'll free up a spot in here, and that will be cool. But before that, I want to drive this thing. I want to enjoy it. I want to see how it feels to drive something so extremely low again. It's been way too long. The D50 is fun, but it's no body drop truck. Let me raise this thing up, and we will paint the beep boop suspension. Where'd I put my spray paint? I need some paint, and I need some anti-seize. All right, the first order of business was shortening up these tie rod ends just a little bit, and then also shortening the center sleeve on this. The tie rod ends I just cut with a cutoff wheel on the grinder, took about an 1/8 inch off each side of it, and then the center I took over to the chop saw, and I basically cut just more than a blade width off of it. That should allow it to where I can like shorten these up about 1/4 inch. It needs a little bit more toe in at ride height. It was kind of toed out a little bit. So this will just give me a little bit more adjustment there. Let me throw a little bit of anti-seize on everything, and we can kind of put this thing all back together. Here we go. Now that I can knock off shortening the tie rods off the list, let's go ahead and I'm gonna say finish these front shock mounts, and that just means spraying black paint on them. All right, I threw a little bit of undercoating on that section of the inner fender well that would have had undercoating to begin with. So just kind of quick, down and dirty, threw a little tape on it, black paint on the shock mounts so they're all kind of juiced up and shouldn't rust. I'm gonna put shocks in it next, and then we can move on to something else. We are knocking things off the list. Pretty cool seeing these parts getting mounted up permanently. This might be the last time a shot goes on this thing for a while. We might just be able to drive it. I'm back in the shop. The truck is off the lift. I'm over here just sort of messing around with the air system. There's a bunch of fittings and airlines and stuff that I can do that would be easier to do right now with the bed off. So I've got the truck over here. I took it outside to do a thumbnail shoot for the last video, and brought it back in, and I'm like, I want to throw the bed on, but I feel like I should do this part first. The thing's looking good. It's kind of doing all the things. I actually even aligned the front suspension the other day, so the tires are going the right direction. So we're kind of making moves in the right direction. I've got like the evap system hooked up now. That was kind of a quick little just hooking up hoses and clamps and stuff like that. And then I got part of this air system plumbed right now. I ran to the Ace Hardware. I picked up some more things I need, and now we can hopefully get this thing going up and down on its own here pretty quick. I'm getting the Ride Tech system kind of dialed in as far as plumbing goes. Pretty cool. They give you enough fittings to basically get the tank compressors and all this stuff back here plumbed. There are a couple fittings I'll have to get for the bags for the front, but they actually did have enough for the bags for the rear. I'm pretty close to having this thing like all dialed in. And I did do a couple extra little tricks on it where like I added a Schrader valve in right here, and that means that's basically just so that if the compressors fail, I can reach in here with an air hose and air up the tank. And then I also put a drain valve, like a petcock valve, on the bottom of the tank. So it's all coming together. That was just a little plug for a supply line. If I wanted this thing to be a little bit faster, I could add an extra line in between here and here, and that would get air into the valves a little bit quicker. But I'm kind of just trying to build this thing out with the parts they gave me. All right, we've got air in the tank, and I've got my power probe here. This is kind of like a test light on steroids. You can test for voltage, but you can also give power and give ground. So you hook this thing up to the battery, and it just helps with all kinds of electrical diagnostics. So if I go to this plug and I have my ground on here, I've got these 4 wires that are going to these 4 valve blocks or these solenoid heads. This one should be left front or left rear up, right rear up, left rear down, right rear down. So if I go over here and I put power to these, that's a down valve. That's a down valve. That's right rear up. This should be left rear up. So check that out. The valves are working. Now I can also check like air, I can check air leaks here, but more importantly, we can now go over and get the bed put on this thing and get that done. I think I still have a little bit of undercoating to do under the bed, but I can get this thing aired back up, get it over there, get the bed on the lift and undercoat it, and then put the bed on the truck. That'll be a big move. Let's get busy. It's finally kind of like all one color under here and not looking all hodgepodgey. So, other than that spot, but I couldn't shoot paint right there because I didn't tape off the holes. Oh well. All right, let's go ahead and lower this bed down onto the truck and see how it's all going to come back together. I think what I want to do is just at least get the bed sitting on it tonight, and then tomorrow I can get out here and start finishing things up. It's late, and I want to get this thing on there just to say I did it. There it is. The bed is back on the truck. The bed floor is all painted up. The suspension looks good in there. The roll pin is on point. This thing is looking so good. I think I threw away my spacers that I made for the front of the bed though. So right now I just have like some random stuff shoved in there. Tomorrow we'll have to make some spacers for it because I'm a dummy and I threw them out. All right, I got my new list. Shorter, sweeter, faster. Hopefully we can get most of these things done today. First things I gotta do, make spacers for the bed, bolt it down. Then we'll plumb some air lines up to the front so that we can re-hook up these front bags. I need it in the air to be able to do that. And we will be cruising at that point. Then we just got to slam a tailgate on this thing, some taillights, some wiring, and then the custom seat mounts. Those are going to be kind of a bunch of work. All right, I walked around the shop for like an hour. I wasted a bunch of time trying to find those spacers, and then I went ahead and I'm just going to make some new ones. I just cut a chunk of 1 3/4 round tubing. I grabbed a couple of like 5/8 washers. They fit the end of the tubing almost perfectly. So this will get me my 2 3/8 inch spacer that I need. 3/8 inch, that's hard to say. Anyways, I'm gonna weld these up real quick. I'm gonna use the TIG welder because there really isn't any gap. There's really nothing at all. So I can kind of like fuse those together and they'll be super clean and strong, and we'll be done here in a minute. Where's my hood? Get some welding rod. I took these washers and I cut just like a little slot into them, and that's just so that I have a spot for water to like flow out of them if they get water into them, which they will. So that'll just kind of make it to where they become rusty junk less soon than if I didn't do that. Thing didn't want to kick off for a second. I have had way too much coffee this morning to be trying to TIG weld. There we go. That's a bed spacer. I'll weld it up real quick. I'll paint it black, bolt it in there, and move on to the next thing. Alright, I got the paint booth set up over here. We'll go ahead and throw some Big Rig Black on there. And these things are going to be ready to throw back in the truck. They're still hot, so the paint's kind of baking on, which is good. One more step towards getting this thing drivable, and we got taillights. Stoked on that. I'm gonna zip tie up some wires under here, and we'll probably pull the wires from this guy forward, and then we're getting close to being done under here. Oh, I also got to bolt those spacers in up in here. I've got the airlines run all the way up to the front here. I think that's the last of the airline running. I need to figure out fittings for these front bags. Those are like the only ones I'm missing, so I'm gonna check and see what I need, and then probably make a run to Napa or O'Reilly and hopefully be able to get the ones that I need in stock. So I need quarter to 3/8 push in. I need 2 quarter to 3/8 push in straights. Check it out. The bed's all bolted down, the taillights are in, the lines are run up to the front bags. We're moving on. I got the fuel filler hooked up. I'm gonna throw a tailgate on it. I think we can do like a little bit of wiring, and then we should be able to like go up and down with this thing under its own power, which is awesome. Let's throw the tailgate on and get one more thing off the floor. For some reason, the tailgate on this thing is kind of hurting. Like, it's one of the least nice pieces of the body. And I don't know if it just got kind of, holy cow, it's heavy. It's a factory one. All right, let me talk less and get this thing installed. All right, tailgate is on. All the little hinges and stuff are bent up pretty bad on this thing. I really kind of need to go to the wrecking yard and track down another tailgate for this. It's also got a big dent here. But look at that. First time you've seen this truck with a tailgate on it, probably. Looking good. It is dirty. Filthy. Let's throw a little instant quick detailer at it and see what it looks like with a little bit less dust and dirt and grinding junk on it. Heck yeah, back of the truck looks like a truck. Greetings on a wet and rainy Christmas Eve. I'm out here in the shop. I'm gonna try and get a bunch of work done on the Nissan today. All right, I got all the power and ground ran up to the battery, and this thing is like ready to go as far as outside the vehicle goes. Now I can jump inside and finish up the computer system thing and all that. And hopefully this thing's gonna be like pew, 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 here soon. We'll go crank it up and see if it makes air compressor noises and air valve noises and goes up and down. Heck yeah, we're closing in on it. Here we go. This is the last little bit to hook up this Ride Pro E5 system. I need to hook up here to the module. This is kind of the brain of the whole system. It'll most likely end up living in my center console area. And then this cord is going to end up going up to the dash, most likely. And that plugs right into the monitor. Boom. So, if all goes well, we turn this ignition key and the compressors kick on. There's probably some setup. Let's see what happens. No compressors. Oh, we got power. Oh, air compressors are running. This is good. This is cool. Let me go ahead and fire the truck up just so we don't kill that battery. All right. Let me see what we got. Oop. The alternator belt's squealing. There we go. Let me get down there and see if both compressors are running. All right, we've got one compressor running. I know there was something in here about how to go in and set up your second compressor because they're kind of like preset to only run one. I totally screwed up the last clip, but basically we've got 139 in the tank now. You go back over here, you can go into setup, and I clicked on use secondary compressor. So we should be good there. I can go. I don't think I'm going to need a ton of air pressure in this thing. We'll go to kick on at 130. All right, let's see where it ends up. And then we'll go back to, oh, they shut off at 150. Okay, so we got on at 130, off at 150. That's good. Now let's see what happens if we put some air in a left front bag. Alright, that should be left front, right front. Let's see how we're looking up here. Yep, definitely got air in them. This is good. This thing's working. That's cool. So we're at like 105 pounds in the front bags, 39 and 41 in the backs. Let's lower this truck down and see if it holds itself off the ground. Cool. Compressors are back off. It's off the lift. The truck is holding itself up. And that's only at 100 pounds in the front bags. Let's see if this thing works. So, if we go front down, let me make sure I get everything out of the way. We won't crunch the rockers. All right, front down. Rear down. It is laid out. Let's see if it'll get up in the air. There we go. Front's at 106. Haha! There we go. 100 in the front, 32 in the back. It's off the ground, and it looks good. All right, it's time to start messing with seats. Time to do some seats. I think I'm actually going to finally peel the paper and tape off of this thing. It's like a dungeon in there, and I want it a little brighter. I'll be careful grinding and cutting, make sure I don't burn up the glass. But I think it's time to finally take this off. I'm so excited. So excited. I hope I'm not just going to be super disappointed in the fact that the tape is all stuck. All right, let me take my time. Let me take my time with this. And hopefully, having bought the blue painter's tape and not using regular hand masking tape, at least makes it to where I can get this stuff off of here. I think we're gonna be good. We're gonna be good. Oh my gosh, like there's a windshield under there. Holy cow, it's been a long time. Been a long time. If you guys don't have one of these yet, you need to get one. This is just a battery-powered shop vac. This one's from Harbor Freight. They're so good. It also hooks up to 110 if you really want it to, but I always just use it on a battery. Cleaning up years of grinding dust and project dust and grime. This is a good feeling. All right, I burned through another day. It's getting late. Oh geez, it's getting late. Christmas Eve. I gotta go inside and hang with the family. But I wanted to show you these seats first. Check these out. These are, that one's tipping over. These are PRP Enduros in a gray tweed with black vinyl. This is something I actually ordered for, I ordered these things for the Jeep truck thing, and I didn't use them. They are like period correct, perfect interweave tweed pattern. So I'm gonna try and fit these things in here, and hopefully we can make them work out. Let's get it at least mocked up in here, and then I gotta go inside and hang out with the fam. Oh, that looks awesome. Oh, that is gonna be good. I've got to figure out if I'm gonna try to do sliders on these things or just hard mount them and have them in one spot front to back, but be able to recline them. There's so little room in here with the body drop. I think I'll probably just get super basic and just mount these seats without being able to slide them front to back. Let me get this thing kind of propped up and at least see if I fit in the truck with an actual seat in here. I feel like it's at least gonna be right there. Oh yeah, they're definitely not getting sliders. We'll tilt back and we'll be good. So cool. All right, tomorrow morning after Santa Claus stuff, we will come out here and mount some seats. I think this is gonna be good. It's Christmas morning. I've been out here for a little bit messing around with the truck. Tried to fix some wiring in the kick panel area that I burned up when I was body dropping it. And I'm also over here kind of making some ultra simple seat mounts. Let me cut this guy out real quick and then we'll kind of go through what I'm trying to make happen. We're starting pretty basic on these seat mounts because my brain's not really working yet. I'm just making some pretty basic tabs. This is just going to be for the front inside corner of the seat. I made one that's kind of the right shape already, and then this other one is the rough. I'll sand the two together, drill them together, and then we should have two matching sort of 90-degree brackets. I can drill these things out. All right, so we should have two of 8 usable tabs. We'll go mock these ones up and see where the others are gonna fit. All right, that first little bracket's in. It's just that inside front corner, and that was making the bracket that way was basically the easiest I could get those two bolts as close together as they are, and that will get me, that's a good starting point. Now I can level this thing out and start making the other 3. I'll probably start with this front one. We'll do the mirror image of it for over there, and then we'll go do the backs, and then all of a sudden we'll have 4 seat mount bracket tabs for 2 seats. All right, the seat is square and level, so I can go and cut a piece of that angle right at 3.5, and that'll be plenty big. Boom. Right there. Go ahead and mark the backside. And then I'll just kind of mark around this And then I can measure off of that to find where I want to put this hole. So come up 5/8 and in a half. 5/8 and a half. Cool. I got my hole for the tab on the seat, and then I got my hole for the bracket on the frame. Now I can kind of make it look cool because I know what it's got to do. So if I take and kind of round a couple of these edges off, it'll look a little bit less like junky old angle iron. I'm going to go cut and grind and drill, and we'll be back to bolt this in and see how it works. Check that out. 2 more tabs. No welding required. Let's go see if they work. I think this one is supposed to fit like that. And that should be in there. That goes there. Boom. Half of the seat mounts are done. Let's figure out the rears now. There it is. This should be the final seat tab. Seems like it's lining up. Look at that. Look at that. Seat's mounted. Let's move some of this stuff out of the way and see how it works. It's a little tight getting around the steering wheel, but that's kind of normal. I can push the clutch all the way. I've got enough headroom to where I'm kind of comfortable. Probably not going to fit much bigger of a person in here, but that's probably not a problem I need to worry about today. Stoked. All right, I'm going to go ahead and finalize the hardware on this one. We'll get the other one put in, and then I think it's time to throw some fenders and a front bumper on this thing. Look at that, Matt's over here helping me out. It is, it's late night, Christmas. Merry Christmas. We're just out here partying down. I got the seat belts mounted and seats done, so he's over here messing with brake lights. What do we got? We got no brake lights. We got no dome and no dome and map lights, and the radio wasn't working. So we're kind of like messing with that. I threw a fuse in for the brake light switch, and it popped it immediately. And then same with the dome light, map light one. So I kind of feel like there might be, at one point I recall messing with the dome or the map lights here, and I popped this down and there was like mouse nest up in here. So I kind of feel like there is probably a short in the wiring in here that is causing the problem. And since this does have a third brake light up here, maybe that is all like living together. We'll see. So he's gonna mess with that. I'm gonna mess with front fenders and bumper. This is pretty wild. This is actually a 4-wheel drive fender that I picked up forever ago. I picked these up forever ago, and I painted them, I cleared them. Look at these things. There's so much work in body dropping a truck. You can even see, like, I had to modify and cut the whole bottom of the fender off and relocate where they bolt on. Normally they would have a tab down here and bolt this way, and now they've got a little pinch bolt there. So much work. It's crazy that I've been messing with this thing for like 2 years. 2 years, and all this work is gonna kind of finally pay off and become a truck in the end. And Matt is over here hustling this out. What's up?
Dude, I think Santa left some chocolate sprinkles in your headliner.
I know there was nastiness when I popped. Oh, geez. Oh, it's raining. Ugh.
Dude, these are the, oh, dude, these are rainbow sprinkles. Look at these.
That's all, no, that's all poison. That's, ugh.
Don't open your mouth.
Oh, will it fit out the door hole?
I don't know, I hope so. It's all you, homie.
It has to. It seems like it should fit out better than it is. Oh, man. It's not as bad as I was hoping. Ah!
No, Dave.
What is going on?
I don't know. There's no chewed wire. All that for nothing.
Story of my life. All right, we're gonna do this. It's the day after Christmas. Yesterday was pretty good, but today we gotta just go drive this thing. I'm not gonna know what real problems this thing has unless I drive it down the road. I can sit here and fiddle around with all these little things, but I don't even know if this rear end is like functional, stuff like that. So let's go. Let's throw this bumper on and drive it. We gotta drive it. Getting close now. Stoked. This thing's finally coming together. All right, no more excuses. I'm gonna drive this thing. Let's see how she does. Three years almost since I bought this thing, and I almost immediately tore it apart. Looks like this thing's ready to go. Oh, the alternator's gonna be mad. The belt squeal's kind of annoying. We'll fix that. That's minor. I think the belt's finally warmed up. All right, here we go. First time out of the garage is like a complete truck. Get some shots of this thing driving. Pretty freaking cool. Cruising. See if we can get any shots of that back tucking wheel. This is great. Cruising, going through the gears. Seems pretty normal. Steering wheel position and seating position is pretty bad. Steering wheel's way down in my lap. Not much room between the steering wheel and my legs or the seat, you know? Oh, it's so cool. We're driving this thing. First time on drop spindles. First time with the bearing grease packed in there. I mean, these brakes have never been bedded in. Nothing. It's all fresh. All fresh. I'm driving around and we're getting all the sand off the road, and you can hear it just flinging around under the bed and in the fender wells and stuff, and it just makes me glad that I undercoated and painted everything so much. That should help a lot in the long run. All right, I gotta know how this thing looks aired out. We're out of the garage. I can finally see kind of what's going on. I'm still kind of learning this air system, but we'll get it. I'm in like a dirt lot. Oh yeah, it's on the ground. Let's get out and see how this thing looks. You guys ready for this? There it is. First shots of this thing like out and about and driving. So cool. I know a lot of you guys aren't gonna understand the whole Super Slam mini truck thing, but oh my gosh, this is a long time coming. I mean, I've had plenty of mini trucks. I've had body drop trucks. I've never had one this nice. This thing is so good, so good. I mean, it's kind of a crummy old 30-something-year-old truck, 29-year-old truck right now, but it is in such good condition for what it is. And it's got the look. Oh my gosh. Check that thing out. First test drive since everything has been done. I mean, front suspension, rear suspension, body drop, roll pin, wheels, tires, seats, inner fender wells. I've got some wiring gremlins I gotta work through, and I gotta throw some interior back together. But this thing is so cool. Stoked. Thank you guys for watching the Dirthead Shed. I'm gonna get back in this thing, cruise some back roads, probably swing by a friend's house, and then we'll get it back in the shop, get it ready for a show or something. I don't know. I don't even like show trucks. I'm just gonna get it ready to drive to work. All right, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks a lot.